Okay, you're listening to Christian Eldership, where we're talking about the elders and what it means to be an elder. We're going through the book right now, They Smell Like Sheep, by Dr. Lynn Anderson, and we're going to look at chapter 2 of this book. And it has a number of distorted leadership styles, according to our good friend Dr. Lynn Anderson. And do you guys recall? It's been a little while since you read this chapter. Anything stick out to you? We'll go through. I got 5 of these distorted models. We can look at each one, but any highlight first? I'm going to call that a no.
Not everyone at once here.
Yeah.
Okay, the hired hand. Remember what the hired hand is?
Basically, someone who just gets paid to do a job, and he has no vested interest in the sheep itself.
Exactly. If you're the hired hand, and they're sheep, and they're kind of doing sheep things, and then like a wolf comes up, what does the hired hand do?
He runs away.
Not really interested. Yeah. It's like, oh, that's too bad. There's no real skin in the game, no real investment. They're just there for a job.
Yes. Yeah. I guess my comment here is, I think this happens a lot when well-meaning people try to take on leadership positions in the church, and then maybe they get in over their head, and we've seen that, right?
Right.
And kind of the way it's presented in this book is a little bit, maybe it's kind of very negative. But I think that very well-meaning people can end up in this position. People who want to do work for the church, and let's be honest, if someone raises their hand and says, I'm willing to lead X, we're probably like, that is amazing because no one else wants to do it. So here's the keys, right?
We're all over it.
So,
which is probably an issue in the church. We need maybe some standards.
Well, that's just it.
But it's true. You're right. I mean, you've got breath and half a desire.
Yeah.
Whether it's out of guilt or we don't really care what caused the desire, we'll take them.
Right. Yeah, and that's where you do run into trouble when something big comes up, or where they realize that they're in way over their head. They're just going to bail. They aren't going to try to fight through it and seek any help or guidance to correct an issue. They're just going to run away.
But on the flip side of that, as long as they're not in a leadership position, we need hired hands. We need people to do the work, in the church. Maybe not in a leadership position or a role, but we need to have people to get the job done.
Sometimes you do things for no other purpose or reason than it just needs to be done. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
It's tough when you're dealing with volunteers. It's not like a job where you can just say, you go do this, right? Here, we're trying to encourage people to step out and help us. But at the same time, I think we could do more to say, maybe you should be in this area or that area. Maybe the area they're volunteering for maybe isn't the best fit. Maybe you let them realize that, but then kind of coach them or move them into a different position. I've seen it where maybe we've let people flounder a little too long, and what ended up happening in that case is they left the church completely, and I don't want that either.
Yeah, they're frustrated. Everybody's frustrated, and sometimes it takes us too long to figure that out.
Exactly.
And it's genuine, I guess is the word I'm looking for. It's real. I mean, they really are frustrated. We put them in a place they're not gifted for, and like I say, maybe they came in because they were guilty. Maybe they felt guilty, or just because they saw a need, and they're just neat people or good people, and they want to serve. But it just didn't work, and sometimes often we all figure that out too late, definitely. Well, another distorted leadership model was the cowboy. Do you remember what the cowboy is talking about?
The difference between a cowboy and the shepherd, the cowboy actually drives or forces the herd to go their way.
Okay.
Instead of leading.
Kind of a pusher, driver.
Yeah, it's not relational based. It's just like, okay, this is what we need to get done. I'm going to tell you what we need to get done. This is how I want it done.
Pull out the whip
and I'm going to force you to do it that way.
How do people generally respond to that?
Yeah.
revolt
yeah. Probably depends on their personality too.
or cowering in
they'll
the corner.
They'll either revolt outwardly or inwardly. But yeah, I think revolt's a good word. They're either going to go home and then revolt to their spouse or friends or dog, and I can't believe that person's blah blah blah, or they're just going to go right back at them. Either way, it's not healthy. It's not a healthy style.
But here's my comment. I think it is a good style. I would say this is the trait that requires the most finesse and the most maybe art to it. Because some people want to be driven. They want to be told what to do. They're just like, I'm here, show me what to do. Mm-hmm. There is a huge amount of finesse in being a cowboy to gently drive versus what, again, we've seen models of people who are way over the top, and they're just like they don't know how to work it with people. You know what I'm saying? They just start saying, go do this, go do that, barking orders, and it turns everyone off.
Yeah, and I think the key there is the finesse of it and knowing which people need that style of leadership. And I don't know if it's necessarily actually being an elder to people at that point, or if it's just trying to get something done.
Right.
If you're just driving things in the realm of eldership, is like, you need to get through this material, you need to do this, you need to do that. Are they building a relationship with you and or Christ, or are they just doing the activities of the church? So,
I think everybody's got different personality styles, and so your team of people you work with or you interact with are going to be different. And so I think something that all these styles, if you're too heavy one way,
exactly,
you're not going to be. You need to diversify a little bit, from a standpoint of you're going to have to change it up once in a while. I think there are times where, to be the cowboy or be the next one, the sheriff, where you really drive stuff or you really kind of lay down the laws is needed at times. But I also think there's times where, that comes off a little overbearing at times. That style might not work very well.
And I guess really that comes down to knowing your sheep, and smelling like them, being with them, living with them,
right.
Knowing what's needed at this time in this situation versus another situation, instead of always having just one style for every situation.
There's a time and place for everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think the premise of this chapter is that, none of these are, you're going to use some of these all the time, but if that's your dominant trait, you need to diversify a little bit. Yeah. Most of us probably tend to lean toward one or the other. So I think it's so important that we pray for wisdom and discernment,
Yeah. Agreed.
Let's see. You mentioned the sheriff, right? The sheriff was the next one. I don't recall the difference between the sheriff and the cowboy.
He more demands instead of drives. He demands. He's the sheriff. The way his way is or the highway.
Yeah, and it's more about law following, rule following. Well, you didn't follow this rule in this particular thing. I keep the peace by following the rules, and the rules are everything. If you don't follow the rules, then I'm going to bust you on it, and rake you over the coals about it until you change your way. So,
and I like
even too much respect, I would say. Like, he has the badge, so if you're an elder, you have the title. You flash that too often. It's probably the sheriff probably does that too often, I would say.
Yeah, my favorite line on this at the very end, it says the church leader who has to assert his authority doesn't have much. If you have to let everybody know who you are.
Yeah, that's the title-driven.
That's my title.
Yeah.
Bow to my title. Yeah. And I can't remember when I was back in Sioux City, one of my leaders came up and he sat at the table like, oh no, sir, your seat's up here, and he's like, nah, wherever I sit, that's the head of the table. I'm like, oh, okay.
That's good.
Oh, nice.
Well, and I like the last sentence of this section. It says, because I said so. I mean, that's the kind of the sheriff thing. It's like, because I said so, or the rules said so. The author's comment is, at that point, they've already lost the relational round with their flock, or this example is with their child. I mean, how often I catch myself saying, or at least thinking, because I said so. My child
Yeah.
asks, well, why? But why? It's like, it's a respect thing. Respect me and just do as I say. Don't question everything.
Yeah, yeah. So okay. So how does the average sheep respond to the shepherd? What does that do? What does that do if we're all a bunch of sheriffs running around?
They may just feel stifled that they can't express, a potential different way of doing something, or, they can't be real. They can't express maybe some of the difficulties that they have in their life because they're not fitting the rule of law.
Maybe some fear.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your first reaction when you're like drive by and you see an officer in a car? Usually,
I better slow down.
yeah. I always just assume I might not
that
be speeding,
Roger?
but I just better make sure.
I hope I know that guy.
I hope he's having a good day. Okay, the pop-up manager. What was that all about? I have
Just
pot versus.
quick conversations, or
Okay,
quick contact. There's no. I think no depth. There's
Yeah.
no chance to build on anything. I'll spend 2 minutes with you, but not, sit down and have dinner with you type of person.
Kind of the used car salesman. Hey, how's it going? Hey, that's what I think of. I don't know.
Well, it's very easy to get into that. I'm in the leadership position Sunday morning. I talk to people Sunday morning, and especially with working outside of the church and this activity, that activity, it's very easy to get into that pop-up manager kind of situation.
Pop in here once in a while, and then I'll pop out.
Really have no substance.
Then there's one more here: the CEO, chairman of the board.
Yeah, so as I've mentioned before, I think the way that this is portrayed in this book is very cartoony. A CEO is this angry guy that sits in a room locked away making decisions to, crush his employees and make all this money. And I argue that real CEOs that are successful are very good at what they do because they're strategic thinkers. And my argument is churches need more of this, not less of it.
Yeah.
A church needs people who can think long term, see the forest, what's the impact of some of the major initiatives that they're working on, and take their congregation in a certain direction. Now, of course, if that's all you do, I don't think you're being a leader in the elder sense, really. You're not shepherding your people. You're just kind of sitting back and watching it happen. But I argue, I think it's important to a certain extent that this has to be a trait, with balance, kind of like what you were saying, Brandon.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's maybe even a difference between, a CEO, in the 80s or 90s versus a CEO today. Depending on the type of workforce you have and how people nowadays are definitely more about relational, and with the communication generation and millennials, and that everything is instantaneous. There used to be companies that would run that way. There's a directive from the board that this is where we're going, how we're going, get on board or you're out. You don't necessarily see that today.
As soon as you said 80s, I just thought Gordon Gekko. Can
There
I get
you-
an amen?
Right.
You with the pop collar.
Yeah. Well, it's 80s night.
Oh no.
So, I do see Brian's point too, that you need direction and guidance, but it can't just be a closed board. It's
Right.
a mix of everything.
That can be detrimental to a church, when you have a group of guys that are voting on things and then handing it down to the church saying that we have decided, and this is what we're doing. But at the same time, they need to lead. So there's little pieces of all of these are important, and balance is important. And as I say, I go back to discernment and prayer. Where is God leading us as leaders within the church to lead His sheep? We just have to be careful of taking, I think, any of these two extremes. And so, it was a pretty simple chapter, but other thoughts? It was just a pretty short version, but nothing wrong with short, right?
Well, I think it's important, to have studies like this. We're reading this book. They smell like sheep, and how to become better leaders.
Right.
And you can utilize these as tools. Sometimes we need to be a sheriff. Sometimes we need to be a cowboy. Sometimes we need to be a CEO. Maybe the pot managers, we connect with those people of this generation that use Facebook and social media more, and that's the microwave or the drive-through way, But you got to meet people as leaders. We need to meet people where they are, and maybe some of these people that we're leading are these people, and we just need to know how to communicate with them, how to shepherd them. One thing I learned a long time ago is when you are leading people, we want to make sure that we're not going too far ahead. If we go too far ahead, we're going to lose them. So we need to meet them where they are and then lead them where they are.
I used to go to a discipleship group in Colorado three times a year, and I remember him. Alan Algram was the guy who led this group, and I remember him drawing on a board once, and it stuck with me to this day. A couple mountain peaks, right? And he had a little stick figure, and he said, here's all the people down here at the bottom, and they're watching you climb this hill. We're going this direction. Here's where we're headed. This is what we're going to do. And we're tempted. We're seeing like 3 mountain peaks down, right? And we're tempted sometimes to get over the hill and halfway up the next one, and everybody's still back here. Once they lose sight of you, it's over. Yeah. So, you can get too far ahead, and they can't follow who they can't see. And it might be some idea that this group maybe has, meshed out and thoroughly thought through, and we're like, why aren't you people with us? And people, it takes them a while to catch up because they're processing. You present some idea or direction or something, and they're just now starting to process what we've been processing for 6 months, and if we get too far ahead, we'll just lose them all in any type of leadership role. So that is so key of all, and because I tend to be that guy. I'm kind of resting on the third peak, like I'm already out there, and I have to really watch myself to kind of slow down and go back and get bite-sized pieces for people to chew on and process, and realizing that whole ultimate journey might change a little bit here and there on the way, and that's okay, So yeah, that's very insightful there. Any other thoughts?
No.
No?
Nope. This is good.
All right. We're going to wrap it up. And Christian Eldership talking about They Smell Like Sheep, specifically Chapter 2, some distorted views of leadership models. And hopefully you are in your team are figuring out where you are, what your tendencies are, what your strengths are. And that's a good conversation to have with all of you. We'll do that off camera maybe. And we can rip on each other. I mean, be
encouraging.
edify
Yes.
and encourage each other. Anyway, that's it for this time.